right, we're going to take a look at the first test review that you have. You guys are going to take it on Thursday and Friday this week, hopefully, and it covers chapters 1 through 3. So question number 1 on the review sheet, you want to focus on the first activity that we see people having was tool making. In the Neolithic period, people had more free time where they would make tools, they would create art, they would socialize, etc. Focus on women playing a role in the transition of crop cultivation early on because women were the primary hunters and gatherers of the wild plants, and so they were most familiar with them. When the switch happens from hunting and gathering to agriculture, there's an increase in population. Farming was harder on the people than hunting and gathering, primarily because of needing to clear land, and that takes a toll, the amount of work that needs to be done. Question number 2, you want to focus on how Mesopotamia depended on canals and irrigation. Women lost status because men took over as the primary food providers. Women did work in manufacturing textiles, they brewed beer, they worked as prostitutes, but they could own property, so there were some things that were positive amongst the negative things that women were facing in the transition to agriculture. The Mesopotamian military had bronze weapons, they had chariots, metal-tipped arrows, and siege machineries. Those are some of the military technologies that they had. When looking at the Egyptian River Valley civilization, focus on that Egypt was naturally isolated, and therefore they became very self-sufficient. The Egyptians' view of the universe was that it was stable, and that was because their environment was stable. We see that with the regular flooding of the Nile River. And they also believed that their pharaoh was a god. When you look at the Indus River Valley civilization, we think that the fall came because of the river drying up. Another thing that is a possibility is it could have been flooding, could have been the salinization of the farmland, or increased erosion. We don't know much about the Indus River Valley civilization. What I just mentioned were theories about why it collapsed. The handwriting that archaeologists have found in the Indus River Valley civilization has never been translated. So therefore, the Indus River Valley civilization is still very mysterious. We don't know a lot about it. Number 5, when looking at the Chinese River Valley civilization, you want to focus on how China was more populated than the north. And that's because the crops could sustain more people. The rice, there was more regular rain in the south also. Feng Shui orients the buildings in harmony with heaven. They used oracle bones. That's the main source of information that archaeologists have for this time period amongst artifacts that they have found by the writing. Make sure you look at that section in the textbook. I believe it's the green insert. I'm not sure what page, but in chapter 2 about the oracle bones. And so there also is some information in royal and elite tombs. Be familiar with the mandate of heaven. It said that you could rule as long as you remained a wise and principled guardian of the people. Number 6, the 3 major religions or philosophies of China. Be familiar with Confucianism. The way the country is run is parallel to family life. It encourages the avoidance of violence. It promotes justice, loyalty, and dignity, and the assumption that humans are good. Taoism, you want to focus on accepting the world as you find it and avoid struggles. Legalism, this is the concept that people are evil and the government must do whatever it takes to control the people at all costs, and there's very strict laws there. Question number 7, when you look at Nubia and its long-distance trade, Nubia is the kingdom that was south of Egypt, and it was located on the Nile River. The Egyptians took the Nubian children hostage, and they educated them, and so the Egyptians are trying to beat their enemy by changing the way that their children think. The Nubians served as archers in the Egyptian military. The Nubians traded with the Egyptians, and the Nubians built Egyptian-style buildings. Question number 8, with the Celts. The Celts had no real political system. Be familiar with the 3 different kind of the levels of social structure that they had. Make sure you know that the Celts were really focused on these kinship groups. And most of the information we have about it we get from the Greeks and the Romans, specifically Julius Caesar. Number 9, the Olmecs, the big-headed statues. Look over that insert in the textbook. Cities were laid out to be aligned with the stars, and we're going to see this a lot in Mesoamerican culture, being these groups are very into astrology and astronomy. Question number 10, you want to look at that the elements of culture were widely shared, and so that's why it's called cosmopolitan, because you have all these different groups, whether it be Europeans, Asian influence, African, all meeting in that Middle Eastern kind of Mediterranean area, and that's why it's called cosmopolitan, because the elements of culture were widely shared. Question 11 talks about the successes and the struggles that Egypt had in the New Kingdom. Focus on the Hyksos conquering Egypt. That group is very mysterious. Don't know a lot about them, but we do know that they had horse-drawn chariots with archers that would ride in the back. So this is going to give them a military advantage. When the Egyptians defeat them and take back control of their country, they're going to expand north into Syria and south into Nubia, and they're going to have access to a lot of resources. Question 12, Minoan Crete, be familiar with their widespread trade contacts, their widespread trade connections. How do we know the trade connections that they had? So look over that section of the notes. Number 13, what were the accomplishments of the Mycenaean Greece and what indicates their collapse? So linear B, writing disappears, the palaces were destroyed, trade was disrupted, there was a lot of competition for resources, and so check the book for a list of their accomplishments. What I gave you was a focus on their collapse. 14, give a detailed account of the Syrian Empire. Before the Assyrian kings made decisions, they would always consult the gods. They used propaganda, very harsh military tactics like deportation, things like that they used. Question 15, this is about Israel. A lot of people say that the story of Cain and Abel shows a conflict between hunters and gatherers, so go over that in your notes. Political structure before King Saul was that the 12 tribes were each ruled by a chieftain, and then they're kind of united. And then there's going to be fragmentation again. Let me see. It also wants to talk about the Ark of the Covenant. This is a sacred box, for lack of a better term, that contained the tablets of the law that were given to Moses. Solomon is the one who's accredited with building the first temple. Women were somewhat respected because they provided goods and services that sustained the family. There's a lot of dietary rules associated with Israel, keeping the Sabbath, ritual baths, and no marriage to non-Jews. These are some of the things that you want to focus on when you're looking over your notes on Israel. The characteristics of the Phoenicians, the big one is the first alphabet with symbols that represent sounds, so phonetic alphabet. In 17, the Carthaginians, very ambitious, successful families, gain power, they're warlike. So yeah, focus on their ambitions and their successes in military campaigns, and the individuals and the families that gain power in Carthage and attempt to run the country. Oh, your thesis statements. Normally you'll have 2 comparative thesis statements and 2 continuity and change over time thesis statements. Because Coach Dragone and I have not taught you yet the continuity and change over time essay, we're going to give you 2 comparative prompts, and you're going to have to write a thesis statement for each of the prompt. It needs to be a very detailed thesis statement. This is worth a total of 10 points on this test, and so there's going to be two, and you'll need to do both of them this time because there's two comparatives, and so you have to do that. So the thesis statements are: compare Celtic women to Middle Eastern women from the year 2000, from the years 2000 BCE to 500 BCE. And the second one is compare the Assyrians to the Phoenicians or the Carthaginians. You can choose what you want to do there. So you have to do the Assyrians, and you can choose either the Phoenicians or the Carthaginians to compare those cultures. Focus on things like their politics, their economics, their social structures, their goals, their initiatives, all things that kind of define what them as civilizations.